Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the University of Iowa Center for Human Rights webinar, Racial Equity and Human Rights, Activism, Healing, and Dialogue. I am Adrienne Wing, Director of UICHR. I am also the Associate Dean of International and Comparative Law Programs for the College of Law, as well as the Bessie Dutton Murray Distinguished Professor of Law at the college, where I have taught for 33 years. For 20 years, the UI Center for Human Rights has stood for a commitment to human rights, whether within the United States or abroad. We are part of the College of Law, but are involved with the entire UI campus as well as the broader community. Due to recent events, we are sure that many, if not all of you, are in pain on multiple levels, physically, mentally, spiritually, for our families, our friends, our colleagues, our communities, our country, and our planet. UICHR remains committed to helping the university and the broader communities examine and develop concrete solutions to our myriad intersectional cutting-edge problems. For example, this spring, we instituted a series of online panels on COVID and human rights, and we are going to continue that series. Today's event will be the first addressing the latest iteration of the racial crisis affecting our nation. After this 1-hour event, which of course can only touch the surface, if you want further resources, you will be able to go to our website and see a whole collection of them. Our website is uichr.uiowa.edu. We are planning several more webinars on today's topic. On June 17th, we are going to feature nationally prominent Dr. Eddie Moore, who is a UI alum, and he is the founder of the White Privilege Conferences, which have been held across the country for the last 20 years. Dr. Moore is going to speak on what is white privilege. Now, I'm going to introduce the incredible panelists we have for today's event. We're going to show you a slide for each one of them up front, and then we will go and hear from each panelist. Each panelist will have about 10 minutes, and then at the end of their time speaking, we should have plenty of time for questions. So, you see there, our first speaker is going to be Dr. Mary Cohen, who is Associate Professor at the School of Music at UI. She will be followed by Mazahir Salih, who is the Mayor Pro Tem of Iowa City, and she is a member of the Iowa City Council. And I really must commend her because she and the council and others have been on the front line in addressing what is happening right here in Iowa City as well as elsewhere. She will be followed by Kingsley Botchway. Kingsley is a graduate of University of Iowa College of Law. He's the former diversity officer for the Iowa City school system, and he's currently the chief officer in human resources and equity coordinator for Waterloo. He is going to be followed by Professor Sherry Watt, who is in the UI Department of Educational Policy and Leadership Studies. Then after Professor Watt speaks, Professor Cohen is going to come back in and make some further comments. So those are our presenters for today. So let's start out with Professor Cohen.
Thank you, Dean Wing. I'm going to begin our session today with a brief guided meditation. So I invite you to not multitask while I'm doing this. I realize we have many tasks and activities that are prevalent to the point where it's hard to even decide what our next priority should be. Given that, this is your invitation to just do this as you're comfortable. If you're in a safe space, I invite you to close your eyes or to soften your gaze. Notice what you feel now in your body. Allow any place where you sense tension to soften, to melt, release, let go. Notice your breath. Easily feel each inhale and each exhale. Feel your body start to relax. Relaxation. What an interesting concept. Feel the part of your body that is reaching the ground. If you're seated, feel your seat in the chair. If you're standing, feel your feet on the ground. Just feel what is connected in your body to the ground. And deeply, more deeply, notice your breath. Begin to feel your whole self more at ease. Notice the space before you, behind you. Notice the space above you, below you, and all around you. The poem, The Nature of Beauty, that I'm going to share next is by an Oakdale choir member. The Oakdale Prison Choir is a group I lead at the Oakdale Prison with people incarcerated and people not incarcerated. And this student is a member of the Liberal Arts Beyond Bars program. He wrote a poem as an assignment in my past spring 2020 Peace Building in a Prison Choir course, Shane Kendrick. So I share with you now, with Shane's permission, his poem, What is Beauty? What is beauty? It is before me. It is behind me. It is above, below, and all around me. Beauty is complex and simple. Beauty is classic and contemporary. It is stoic and sprightly. It is peace and conflict. Beauty is in the eye, yet somehow universal. Beauty is in perception. Joy Harjo is an internationally renowned performer and writer of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and she was named the 23rd Poet Laureate of the United States in 2019. I learned about Joy Harjo from another Liberal Arts Beyond Bars student in my Peace Building course this past spring, an Oakdale student, Anthony Rod, known as A-Rod. With A-Rod's permission, I'm going to share. He is an enrolled member of the Otoe, Missouri tribe of Indians. He explored Harjo's poetry for his inner peace-building project in that course I just mentioned. The students' projects included aspects of courage, nonviolence, wisdom, creativity, compassion, empathy, rooted in a reading by Olivia Urbane. A-Rod wrote the following. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo discusses the land and its relevance to the contemporary America in the poem Conflict Resolution for Holy Beings. Make sure the spirits of these lands are respected and treated with good will. The land is a being who remembers everything. You will have to answer to your children and their children and theirs. The red shimmer of remembering will compel you up the night to walk the perimeter of truth for understanding. During the semester, the perimeter of our collective truth and understanding was tested by the Corona-19 virus. Overnight, the distance between us, between our worlds, grew apart. However, seeking wisdom from Harjo's words, the land is a being who remembers everything. I am confident that this land which is not only sacred to my people, but sacred to all people, will remember our songs, our smiles, and our community. This land will harbor our collective peace and disperse its harmony when needed. This is what I believe. Please remember this land, for it is remembering us. Thank you, A-Rod. And I will now pass my baton to Mazahir Salih. Thank you.
Hi, hello everyone. As she said, my name is Mazahir Salih. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of Iowa City. I just would like to talk to you about a couple of points about what the city done in response to what's going on right now, or also in the relationship between the city and police and minority. First, I would like to talk about the relationship between the city, police, and any other, local enforcement and the Black community. The City Council has directed all city staff to engage with the member of the community, specifically person of colors and person of historically underrepresented group at many community events and meetings to establish program and policies that support the group. We create a relationship with organizations and group, including but not limited to the Sudanese community, NAACP, Human Rights Commission, Refugees and Immigrant Association, Center for Worker Justice, and South District Neighborhood. Many of these partnerships have been in place for several years now. We also have downtown liaison officer, neighborhood response officer, and community outreach assistant have all been added in the past few years to intentionally work on relationship building in our community. They are quarterly meeting with the University of Iowa Office of Diversity and enrichment staff to address any faculty or student concern, specifically person of color. The police regularly attend event, meeting, celebrations, and festival where participants are mostly person of color. For example, Martin Luther King Day, social food dinner, Juneteenth, and the Latinx festivals. Also, just to increase the communication, the outreach to the Black community, we do a lot of activity to encourage people to become familiar with our police officer and our services, such as Coffee with the Cop at various locations throughout the city. We have free ride along, where you can come and go with a police officer in response to a call and learn about what they do. Partnered with NAACP for presentation on hate crime, participate in the annual community police review board annual meeting, also participate in Humanize My Hoodie workshop, attend party in the park, Iowa City Pride, and Juneteenth. Also, we initiated programs where that will pay for minor car repair if you've been stopped by the police for minor car repair, such as, just your light wasn't working or something like those. So the police will give you free coupon to go and replace your light pole instead of just give you a ticket. Participating in the city manager roundtable meeting, and the city manager roundtable meeting has representatives from various community groups, including refugees and immigrant community. Also, we just saw that our police, we done a lot of training for the police themselves, and the training that the police completed so far is crisis intervention training, advancing racial equity, cultural intelligence, Black women's criminalization, protecting and serving domestic violence and sexual violence survivor in the Black community, advancing racial equity and community engagement, cracking the code on social justice, engaging immigrant and refugees community members. All these programs that they've been completed. And also, let me tell you about what have the police done to ensure accountability and transparency with the Black community. Began several years ago, the city and the city police department have, for several years, the police department department participate in traffic study and, racial demographic on travel. And also like another program. Just for the sake of the time, I just want to say that there is many things has been done, but during this difficult time, I just would like to say that the interim police chief conduct killing of also of force conducts the killings of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer, and also the mayor and the mayor myself. We march with with the protesters, and we try to make that to keep them safe. We don't like what happened on the day before yesterday. That's why we did with them. I just also, I'm just looking at the time that been warning me. Like, okay, the mayor also conducted the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officer. Also in the social media, we've been boosted and support Black Lives Matter by a lot of means. Also, the city have a lot of plan to do for the futures. I guess we are making a commitment to achieve racial equity. Also to review existing policy and procedure and consider recommendation for human rights advocate to ensure the city is using best practice around racial equity work in the city police service and programs. Also would like to continue to take active steps to increase the racial and the ethnic diversity of the applicant pool within the police department. And also work in partnership with others across the community. I think I just went through, I thought I don't have time, that's why I just skipped something. But I just want to make sure that you understand like what the police done to ensure accountability and transparency with the Black community. I told you that we been doing like traffic study for years now. And also the city has established community police review board that review police policy and receive community complaint from reviewer and members of the appointed by the, I'm the member of those, the police review board committee appointed by the city council. Also, the city report annual on the racial demographic of police staff and charge, including both youth and adult. The city also use racial equity toolkit to existing and proposed police and program for equity. The city participated in Johnson County the disappropriation minority contact and established an intern disappropriation minority contact committee as well. We provide social justice and racial equity quarterly update to the community. The police has a community outreach assistant, downtown liaison officer, community outreach officer, and also LGBTQ community liaison and neighborhood response officer. Yeah, I guess that's what we've been doing. And also just to, related to what's going on right now, just yesterday, all the city council was present with the rally, and we try to help them, we also had a meeting with organizing, and we know what their demand is, and we are working very hard to support them. We don't like what happened. As as Black myself, I really have a big concern about what's going on right now, and this concern not like born today or yesterday. This is forever, and now is enough, and we need really to do our best to find out how can we change the practice, of the police enforcement in treating the minority and the people of color. Thank you. I guess I'm going to turn it to Kinsley Patchway. If there is no question, I really don't know what the, what's the step here. Do we have to ask question right now, or I don't know.
Go ahead, Kingsley. We'll have questions at the end.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Mazahir Saleh. I appreciate that message. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kingsley Bachway. I am the Chief Officer of Human Resources for the Waterloo Schools, and I'm former Iowa City Council member. I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about the events that are happening in Waterloo, a little bit about the work that's happening from a collaboration coalition standpoint, but also to talk to you about strategizing and thinking critically about the time that we are in. So to start off with, the Waterloo protests have begun in earnest last Friday, where we had an amazing number of people from all walks of life that came forward to vent their frustration, anger, and angst around the killing of George Floyd. From that, there's been a lot of collaboration with the police department. Myself and other community leaders were in meetings with the new African-American police chief, Chief Joel Fitzgerald, the first African-American police chief for the city of Waterloo in its history, to come forward and work on opportunities to bring the community together. And that occurred Tuesday night, where we sat with many protesters. We talked with many protesters, and I want to commend the new chief, Fitzgerald, because he came without officer support. He came into Lincoln Park, where a number of agitated protesters, rightfully so, surrounded him to ask him important questions about what he was going to do differently, how the department was going to move in a different direction from some of the issues that have happened in his past and in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. So I commend him for his work on that effort. I can also tell you that there are multiple community conversations that will occur from this, not only with community leaders, but engaging with community on a regular basis. That's the first time I've ever seen a chief of police do that in that particular way, to be down and to talk with people where they are, not with officers, not having other individuals surround him, literally by himself. In that opportunity, in that space was something to behold. There is going to definitely be an audit of our policies and practices. I know I've spent a number of hours, even this past weekend, looking at the Waterloo Police Department policies in conjunction with some research and analysis that came out in 2016 of best practices and changes that directly address officers watching incidents of unreasonable force, directly address officers and engaging in use of force that is outside the realm of reasonableness. And the chief has stated to me a willingness to work on those efforts and willing to sit down with community leaders and have multiple conversations about how we can move forward. As I say that, I'd be remiss to say there haven't been issues that have happened with police in these protests. It hasn't been, at times, always locking in arms. While that has happened at times, it's also been tear gas being used. It's been people bloodied by the event. And I want to caution us. I want to caution those that are listening that that is not okay. And while I understand the aggression, I understand the aggression from protesters. I understand the impetus of anger. We truly need to come together and do it in a way that doesn't cause some of the violence that I've seen happen to our protesters in the last couple of weeks and definitely in the recent days. But there is hope. As I told you, the new chief has a concerted effort. The mayor has also joined with us in a concerted effort and led the charge in this work as well. And so I'm proud of Mayor Hart and the work that he's been doing to move Waterloo community forward. The Waterloo Community School District, with Dr. Lindeman in his charge as a superintendent, she has put out a statement decrying the killing that happened with George Floyd and truly setting us on a path that we should not go back from. With that, we will continue to address the equity training that we currently do at the leadership level. We will continue to do the equity training that we have with our teachers. We will push for focusing on the evaluation of equity, the evaluation of disproportionality in education and in behavior and discipline. That's important for our principals and leadership to be a part of. And we have dedicated our time now in the next couple of weeks and actually starting next week with a conversation with staff to show our support to our staff of color, but also to talk about the actions that we will be taking moving forward. Some that were already in the hopper and others that are just beginning as we hear more from our community as we move forward together. I keep hesitating because I've been waiting to get to this part of the conversation, because while I'm excited and interested in honestly grateful of the many different opportunities that we have had to come together with police department, with law enforcement, to show our unity, I want us to think critically about the time and about how we are going about it. One of the quotes that I hope you will take some time and review that I want to leave you with is a quote from James Baldwin that I have spent a number of years reading and truly idolize as a narrator of unfortunate American racism that has occurred throughout our history. And one of the quotes that I focused on in this particular time is the focus on, and I quote, "The American idea of racial progress is measured by how fast I become white," end quote. I say that because I've been on Facebook, I've been on social media, I've been talking to colleagues, I've been reading many different things and hearing the things that happen not only in this community, but across Iowa and across the country. And I am concerned that we have not truly spent time hearing the pain of others, understanding that this pain is not necessarily just for George Floyd, but others that have come and been killed by officers of the law, been killed unjustly, not given job opportunities, not been able to get the benefits that others have had. And I know that Dr. Moore will speak eloquently about white privilege and the ramifications of a continual system that adores white privilege in all its forms. So when we think about how quickly we are moving forward and what type of messages we are putting forth, as I see Target and many different companies put messages forth, I ask us to use a critical lens and ask ourselves questions about the boards, the leadership, and ask whether or not people have actually made steps to racial equity, made steps to racial progress, other than the statements that they have put out in support of the protests and things that are occurring. I'm concerned about the rubber band effect. While we focus on this particular issue and this death that we need to focus on, unfortunately, we will not continue to focus on many of the errors that come with the issues around racial inequality and bigotry and discrimination. So when we pat others on the back and we like those Facebook posts and statements, I urge us to truly ask ourselves, and I know this isn't a popular question or a popular statement, whether or not the work is truly happening. If you are just jumping on the bandwagon because you see others do it, then you are truly not helping the cause, and you are truly not doing things that will help racial injustice or destroy racial injustice and help racial equality for many that have been faced with death, that many that have been faced with the unequalness that comes with living in America. So I'll end it with that. I appreciate being on this call. I know there's some time for questions later on. I will need to pass this to another, but I urge everybody, I call you, for many people that I know on the call from my previous experience in Iowa City, but also new to the call or new maybe to this conversation, there's a lot more work to be done. And if your work stops at a post, a statement, a like, that's not enough. And I urge you to do more, especially in this time of pain for many people of color across the country. So at this time, I will pass it off to the wonderful and amazing Dr. Sherry Watt.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate just sitting here and listening and taking in both what Mayor Pro Tem Mazahir said and Mr. Kingsley Bachway. I'm deeply honored to be on this panel with such great people and to hear your thoughts and about what's going on in the community, and also to share with you some of my reflections, which I think will hit on some of the things that Kingsley said. So, oops, sorry about that. Sorry about that. So I wanted to begin by sharing a quote by Paulo Freire. And the quote is one that touches me because I think that over time we have really tried to figure out how this whole cycle somehow stops. I just love this quote from a poem by Paulo Freire, and it's called Obvious Song. And he says, "I will distrust those who shall come to tell me in whispers cautiously, it is dangerous to act. It is dangerous to speak. It is dangerous to walk. It is dangerous to wait in the way that you wait. For those ones refuse the joy of your coming. I will distrust those too who shall come to tell me with easy words that you have come. For those ones, as they naively herald you, will first betray you." That quote has been speaking volumes to me lately because I find myself at the point where I'm trying to, I teeter between exhaustion and also some kind of hope and possibility. So I'm trying to listen for the voice that tells me that somehow we are going to authentically and in a terms of very important actions, which I hear some that it's happening through the things that have already been talked about. But I'm also trying to figure out for myself, how do I sit in this space and how do I manage my own reaction to it? As a researcher, I study defensive reactions and I look at how people often display behaviors in difficult dialogues. I fundamentally believe in social change and that social change happens though through being in relationship with other people and primarily based on the work that I do, my own self-work. So the questions that inspire my research are questions like, who am I? How did I come to believe what I do about the world? And how does what I believe align or misalign with who I want to be in the world? So I asked myself a lot of those questions. And so as I thought I'd share today a bit about my own reflections on how I'm managing my own reactions. The beauty of doing the kind of research that I do is, at least if you want to do it authentically, you can't, you have to let it teach you. And it also holds you accountable to doing some of the work yourself. So I thought I'd share with you how I'm managing my own defenses. And a lot of my research focuses on how to be with conflict and not what to do about it. I think oftentimes we jump to action and we want to perform and show people that we're not racist or that we're kind or that we're not any of the behaviors that are seen as socially undesirable. We want to make sure people know that we're not that, rather than actually sitting with and examining for ourselves, what is it within me that might actually have that feeling and how did it come to be and how can I do the work to resituate myself with that or to unlearn that. So I want to share first, before I share kind of two of my reflections, I want to share first I was thinking of what context to bring. And so I think the context for me is, and I think it centers around both feeling lots of anger, lots of sadness, but also because of who I am, I'm also trying to find places of grace, to offer grace, to receive grace. I have grown Black children. I raised my sister's children, and there are 4 of them, and 2 are Black males and 2 Black females. I am always concerned when my kids call, and if they are pausing, if they pause when they call, and there's a pause, or maybe even they're laughing, and I find my heart drops immediately because I'm concerned that something is wrong before I can hear their full voice. So I notice that I'm always angry and afraid, and so the injustice that's happening now through the murder of George Floyd, it's one of those things that I fear every day. I also sit with, in my personal and my professional life, I think the contradiction of having both George Floyd, the pandemic, and all of the disproportionalities around that, but also seeing the video of Amy Cooper, it prompted me to do some reflecting on both in my personal life and my professional life, what I've come to call where I've been Amy Coopered. So there are times that I find myself having trouble managing the feeling around that when that happens to me. And I'm trying to continue to find the hope in that. My 19-year-old called me after Ahmaud Arbery was shot, and he's an athlete, and those of you who know me know that I'm a pretty crazy wrestling fan, and he's a wrestler, and he called me, and he's heard about these deaths before. He's heard about these things. We've talked about them, but something about Ahmaud Arbery's hit him differently. And he said to me, Ahmaud Arbery was an athlete. He was just going for a run. That could have been me. And him saying that through his tears just, obviously tore my heart out and deeply disturbed me. So I'm getting phone calls from my African-American female friends who are at a loss for words. They're distraught and angry. They're also have a voice of resignation. There's sort of a slow simmering rage. They're wondering about this unnecessary and unquieted intrusion that, brings this horror to their lives. I'm getting calls from wonderful and good white friends who are women, trans men, who are calling with a mix of guilt and apology, or awkward apologies, or, also genuine love and deep concern for me. My Latinx, Native American, East Indian friends are sharing similar stories which horrify me of extinction and torment. So I'm asking myself, I'm providing you with that context because I'm asking myself, as all of those people reach out to me, they're asking me the question, how can I stop this horrendous pain? And I'm trying to ask myself, what is it that I can do to be in it differently, and to hopefully move things along in a way that's different than we have before, so we won't get the same thing that we've always gotten, because we're doing the same things that we've always done. So through all of this, I'm holding on to, trying to work through my anger and work through my sadness and calm my anxiety and fear. But I'm also trying to find ways to offer grace, not just to myself, but to all of those folks that I mentioned that are my friends of all different races. I'm trying to offer some grace and not trigger that. So the two things that I think of when I'm trying to wrestle with this is I'm looking for authenticity and not performance. So I believe transformation happens in a society when we actually do our own self-work. So I'm inviting people into dialogue. I'm sitting with my conservative friends and my all of my friends, and trying to have these conversations where I'm very, very honest about where I stand and what I believe in, and how our relationship might have had a misstep that I let slide by, and that has then caused a bigger gap in our relationship, which makes the work towards transformation or dealing with racism or systemic issues, it makes it more difficult because we're not in relationship and our relationship is not in alignment. So I am trying to invite people to be authentic, and also very much, I'm almost nauseous at the thought of performing. I appreciate the statements of support, but I'm almost nauseous if they're not backed up with action. So I'm looking for actual action and not just words and ways to show you're not a racist, not a insensitive person. I want you to actually do your own personal work to ask yourself those questions from within. And then the second thing is, when I think about myself in terms of my own defenses, as a parent, I noticed that when I shame my children, they reach a certain point where they stop listening because they're so, they feel so terrible that they can't look me in the eye. And much worse, they can't look themselves in the eye. They feel badly about it. And over time, I've realized that that doesn't actually work. It works to a point, works to a point, they might stop something that they're doing. But if I keep going and I keep going, then sometimes that shame turns to resentment, and it evokes these types of defensive reactions. And I have found myself in that place when people shame me, because there are things that in the realm of diversity and in the realm of the work that I do, I'm most comfortable talking about race. There are other issues in diversity that I am not as most comfortable talking about. And so I make missteps and I stumble. And so I notice when that happens, that I'm either over emotional, or I'm devoid of emotion, or I overthink, or I don't think at all. And all of those things manifest these defensive reactions that I have. So, and what I'm usually doing when I have those defensive reactions is I'm trying to push myself out of interacting and looking deeper into what might be going on with myself. So as we work through this mess, as I work through it for myself, I'm trying to ask my questions. What do my reactions teach me about myself? And I'm also trying to think about how to have humanizing conversations. So I'll leave you with those thoughts, and I'm hoping that we can have some encouraging dialogue. And I believe I'm passing it off to Mary.
Yes, indeed. And I'll keep mine very brief so there's time for Q&A. When someone is hurt, digging into a wound exacerbates the pain and does nothing to treat the symptoms. People need healing. However, sometimes the wound is hidden. Think about the coronavirus. In one study published in April, researchers tracked 94 COVID-19 patients and found they were most contagious just before or as they developed symptoms. We do not always know when we are sick. This has been the case with white America. Now we are starting to wake up, but there is more to wake up to. The disproportionate number of people of color in prison and under surveillance, the brutality inside prisons, difficulty in re-entry, issues with job, voting rights, sentencing, issues of corporate greed, infiltrating prisons, and I'm talking about the private companies who earn a profit by selling items to people in prison. There was just a merger in 2016 where Keefe and Trinity Groups merged into TKC Holding Incorporated, and they purchased also that same year Inmate Calling Solutions. And so this is money, it's complex. As we know, these are intersectional complex issues. Bail bonds, companies that earning a profit through background checks. We do need to be curious and not judgmental. We need to learn to listen and avoid making assumptions. We also need to learn the facts. In order to speak truth to power, we need an accurate understanding of the truth to move forward in new ways. According to Kara Page, the concept of healing justice is a framework that identifies how we can holistically respond to and intervene on generational trauma and violence, and to bring collective practices that can impact and transform the consequences of oppression on our bodies, hearts, and minds. This month of June is Black Music Month, so I'm going to conclude this portion with a song written by Black vocal activist Melanie DeMore. She's based in Oakland, California, and she wrote this song in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, the day after the 2016 election. It's called Lead with Love. And singing is a learned skill. One of the joys of these kind of webinars is that the only people that'll hear you singing are the people in your vicinity. So I invite you, if you're in a comfortable space, to stand up on your feet and clap along. The verse of this song is repetitive and easy to follow, and the chorus is repetitive and easy to follow, and the verses are call and response. So you just sing right back whatever you want to with the words that I sing. Lead with Love by Melanie DeMore. This is not a performance, trust me. Just as Dr. Watt said, I'm inviting you to join in, and then we'll go right to Q&A after this. So I invite you, as you're ready, to take a deep breath in, let it out the sigh, and the song. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. Clapping with me? You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Lift up your eyes. Don't you despair. Look up ahead. The path is there. Ready? Sing it. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. I know you're scared. And I'm scared too, but here I am, right next to you. Ready? Last time. Gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Thank you, and turn it to Dean Wing, Q&A. Welcome back. My panelists to unmute themselves and to show your images.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Mary and all of the panelists. We have roughly 10 minutes for questions. We're going to go over the time a little bit, and we know some of you may have other things to do. So before I open it up for some of these questions, I just want to remind you of 2 points. One is June 17th, 4 p.m. It will be Dr. Eddie Moore, who will be talking about what is white privilege. And we just had a confirmation that on June 12th, time to be arranged, we're going to have a session on how to help protesters, the legal rights of protesters. So we'll be advertising that on our website. So thank you all for your wonderful presentations, and those are our announcements. And so now we have, of course, way too many questions than we can handle for the time that we have. But I want there's some of them that I'm going to address. So two of them are actually for Mazahir, and they want to know what is the Iowa City Police Department's position on the gassing and assaulting of the protesters this week. Have they formally condemned it? Are they going to formally condemn it? And where can people find the resources you mentioned in your presentation?
The whole council don't like what happened on the like the day before yesterday, and that is not. But if you just think about it, the protester wasn't going on like the past few days before, day before yesterday. There was the protest was started like 4 days ago or 5 days ago. And we make it clear to the police, do not interact. Let those people practice their First Amendment. They can protest. They have the right to protest and express their feeling. And, we have really minimized like police interaction by any means. We don't like what happened at all yesterday or day before yesterday. And today the city manager is putting a press release about like showing that we don't like what happened on that day. And there is, personally, if you ask me, is the Iowa City Police are great? I'm going to tell you, I personally see there is a lot of work need to be done. And I think together as a community, we can make the change that the police department need, so to reflect all our community and being treated, all the people in Iowa City in a fair way and in just way. So I invite everybody to come and talk about it. Take an action and come to the city council, talk about it. We're gonna have a committee. The police review board will look at many ways to change policies. And I guess I encourage everyone, to participate so we can make the change that we want.
And those resources that you mentioned in your talk, where can people find them? Are they on the city website?
The city website, yeah. All of them are at the city website.
Okay, and then also related to this, somebody said, have the police disclosed exactly what was the chemical agent that was deployed against the protesters? What was the substance?
No, actually, the tear gas, besides the tear gas, personally, I don't know what it is. But, I know that was the state call and a patrol call, and it's not like a city call on doing that. But it's still, I guess we have some responsibility, and we have really to be honest and, say that. So I just believe moving forward, we have to change this.
Thank you very much. This question can be for Professor Watt. How can people be better allies and support the Black community?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think the thing I've been sort of responding to some questions, and I think there are actual things you can do. I think what I was speaking to, and I'll elaborate on that because there's a lot of answers to this. I don't think there's one answer or there's one way to be able to be helpful. I think the most helpful thing is to do some self-examination of where your biases come from. How did they arrive? How did you come to believe the things that you believe? Even if you say you believe differently from your parents and you have somehow worked through some of your racist upbringing. I think it's really important to think about how you have participated in either passively or more actively in racist acts, and then do some self-examination. That is a supportive act because it raises your consciousness, and then it helps you to think more carefully about and with intention what your actions would be. And those actions are more likely to be authentic if you have done some of your own self-exploration.
Thank you. Professor Cohen, somebody wanted to know who was the person who wrote that song that you were just doing? They wanted to know the name.
Yes, Melanie Demore. I'll type that into the chat so they have her name, and I think that will be listed on the Center for Human Rights website because I included that in some of the information. Melanie Demore.
Okay, and that'll be in our resource list and in the chat. Mr. Botchway, who we did not introduce, I mean, he has so many titles and former titles, that Mr. Botchway was the former mayor pro tem of Iowa City. And so when I thought about that, oh my God, we have two mayor pro tems of Iowa City. So here's a question for you. what resources are out there, or do you know about on the local or federal level in terms of how to better treat how law enforcement can better treat the Black community?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can let you in on the conversation I've been having. Sorry, I'm pulling it up on my phone. It's the Critical Issues in Policing series, Guiding Principles on Use of Force. It has a number of different statements, and what I alluded to was particular statements in the policy, procedures and policy around use of force and what officers are allowed to do in use of force. I think we have to critically look at law enforcement as a tool. And when I say that, I mean to say that they're a tool of social inequity and racial inequity. I think many times we take a lot of anger out on the officers, many of whom are hardworking people, and being told to do something that at times they may disagree with, but they don't want to be out of a job. And many times they're doing things that are in the policies. And this actually started when I was on city council doing. There was a situation that happened at the city, lost my train of thought, city rec services building, where a child, a student, high school student, I shouldn't say a child, was thrown to the ground by an officer. And the conversation around that and the community unrest around that went to a policy that their use of force, that continuum allowed for that because of the child or the student being in disagreement with the officer and not listening to commands. So there is an incongruency at times with what is on the policy of the police department and what the community believes should be the role of the police. And so that's why I ask everyone to think critically and look at those statements. And the one that I'm thinking of particularly in relation to George Floyd is when you see an officer using an unreasonable use of force, there's a statement in here that says the officer and other officers have to, when I say a statement, there's a policy consideration, a policy that's in here that says the other officers have a right to act. They must do something even if that individual is a higher rank than them. So that would help. I'm not saying it would have helped or changed the situation that happened, but at least there would have been a policy in place. And so I leave with that as the guiding principles document, guiding principles on use of force. That is something that is really useful from my vantage point. And I will add that to the chat.
Thank you. As you know, we have too many questions, not enough time. I'll take the final question. How have other countries historically rallied for wide-scale elimination of systemic white supremacy and for racial justice? Of course, probably one of the biggest examples would be South Africa. And I got involved with the anti-apartheid movement in 1974. And even though that country's been under Black majority rule now for over 20 years, there are still many issues. And so you can study what happened in that society, but they haven't solved it. And this will segue into what I'm going to say in conclusion. Any of your questions that we didn't get to, we'll put answers up on our website for that. But in conclusion, I want to end with something from South Africa. The former president, the late, great Nelson Mandela, wrote, "The struggle is my life." And when he said that, he did not know that he would ever get out of prison. He thought he was in prison for life, and he ended up serving 27 years. When he got out, he becomes the first Black president. The issues that we are dealing with here, that we are talking about in terms of racial injustice, they've been in this country for hundreds of years, and they're going to be around probably for hundreds of years, certainly beyond the lifetime of my 15 Black grandchildren. They're going to be there. So what does that mean? Is it hopeless? What should we do? What it means is we're each going to be judged on the nature of the quality of the struggle that you engage in. And that will change from the time that you're 16 or 18 all the way up to whether you're 80 or not. We're not going to end racism, sexism, or any of these isms, but we must commit ourselves to saying, I will engage in that struggle. I will engage in it by word. I will engage in it by deed. And only then will we say we are making progress as a city, a state, a country, and the planet. Thank you all very much for participating. Thank all of you who are listening. Thank all of you who spoke. And we look forward to seeing you at other UICHR events. Thank you very much.